This is Teachers Talk Radio, and you are listening live.
Hello and welcome to the Sunday Lunchtime Show. Thanks for joining me. Today my special guests are Dr. Priscilla Rifo-Salgado and Neil Arya, and we'll be talking about the importance of research in English language teaching.
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and you are listening live. Tune in live at ttradio.org, or to join in the conversation, download the Podbean app and search Teachers Talk Radio. Follow the hashtag TTRadio. Tune in, talk it out with Teachers Talk Radio.
Welcome to the Sunday Lunchtime Show, everyone. I'm Graham Stanley, speaking to you live from Mexico City. As I mentioned earlier, on today's show, I have a conversation with Dr. Priscilla Rifo-Salgado with Neil Arya. Dr. Priscilla Rifo-Salgado is a teaching fellow in TESOL at the University of Leeds in the UK, with broad experience in ELT teaching and training. Her expertise encompasses language teacher education and inclusive education in English language teaching, focusing on pre-service teachers, professional identity formation during practicum, and with a PhD in education from the University of Southampton and she's a Rice ELT board member. She is dedicated to advancing ELT research and discussions from the Global South context. Neil Arias is a professor at the Universidad Católica de Maule in Chile. He holds a bachelor's degree in education and English language, a diploma in inclusive education, evaluation methods and research in university contexts, and a master's degree in neuroscience applied to education. Neil has enriched his academic experience through exchange programs at the University of California, Davis, and the Hague University of Applied Sciences in the Netherlands. His research interests focus on cognitive neurosciences and evidence-based teaching. Since 2022, Neil has been an active member of the network of Chilean research in ELT, Rice ELT, contributing to projects such as Rice ELT, infographics, and decentering ELT. And I'll be talking to Priscilla and Neil about research and more after the Teachers Talk Radio News.
This show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Don't miss out. Level up your professional development today and visit johncattbookshop.com to explore the full range of titles. Use the code JCTTR2425 for 20% off your order. Happy reading.
Are you a teacher who has concerns about your students' low reading levels? Are you also worried disadvantaged students won't be able to catch up? The online reading development program, Dreambox Reading Plus, adapts to a student's skill level, accelerates reading progress, and helps students acquire a wide vocabulary. The patented technology develops reading fluency and supports the transition to increased text complexity from Key Stage 2 to Key Stage 3 and 4, where language and vocabulary are more challenging. You can try the program with a free 4-week pilot today. Search Reading Solutions UK to find their website and request your free pilot.
How do we stop teachers marking books on their kitchen table on a Sunday night instead of wanting to spend time with their family? Is live marking truly cutting-edge practice? What if I told you that I could provide evidence of verbal feedback and its impact on student outcomes? Now, traditional marking, time and time again, is reported as the number one reason why teachers leave the profession. It trumps behaviour issues and teacher salary. In Guide to Feedback, I share 9 case study skills that demonstrate 9 different ways to provide marking and feedback, all evidenced by student outcomes. Now, not every school will be ready for this, but hopefully you are ready to start your Feed Up and Feed Forward journey.
The Teacher Toolkit Guide to Feedback is out now, and you can get an exclusive 30% discount when you order Teacher Toolkit Guide to Feedback from Bloomsbury.com. Just use the code TTRGTF at the checkout. That's TTRGTF, and it expires 30th of November. Happy reading.
Do you ever wish you could sit down with other teachers and delve into the challenges and opportunities we face? Well, that's exactly what Table Talks at Bet UK is all about. Join small roundtable discussions based on your selected topics to share insights, learn from peers, and tackle the big issues in education, all in a sponsor-free environment. This is your chance to connect and collaborate like never before. Be part of the conversation at Bet UK in January 2025. Visit uk.betshow.com to learn more.
So welcome back, everyone. I'm pleased to have with me Priscilla and Neil as my special guests on today's show. How are you both, and what have you been up to today?
Hi, Graham. Nice to meet you too. Hi, Neil. My name is Priscilla. Thank you very much. I'm very excited to be here today. So I've been running some errands, and I was in a meeting Risel-wise with other colleagues from Argentina just previous to this.
Hi, everyone. My name is Neil, and I'm doing great as well. Here in Chile, it's 10 o'clock. So I've also done a couple things this morning. And actually, talking about Risel meetings, I have one after this radio talk.
Fantastic. So I usually ask my guests how they became teachers, how they became involved in education before we get started to the main topic. So I'd love to hear from you both. Perhaps, Priscilla, you can start. What was it about education that attracted you?
Well, I guess that it was until secondary education where I completed my secondary education in a school that was created by teachers. So many of the people there inspired me, not only English teachers, I'm a teacher of English, but history teachers, philosophy teachers. I think that I really realized how important it was for people to have good teachers. And then when I needed to decide what to complete as an undergraduate, I have to acknowledge that I first decided to study English pedagogy because of the English language. I was really drawn to English language back then, but I thought, well, I'll have a go and I'll see how it goes. But then it turned out that I really like the teaching part as well. We did some practicums from our second year within that 5-year program. So I was in contact with different contexts, different students, and I really like that service part that teaching has. I think that's how I got interested in education.
Fantastic. How about you, Neil?
Well, I come from a family of teachers. So in my family, you can find mathematics teachers, science teachers, foreign language teachers, foreign language as English as a foreign language teachers, and it always caught my attention when my relatives ran into students in the street and they saw former students and how happy those students were when they saw my relatives. So that was one of the things that when I was in high school really caught my attention, to see how much impact you can make in someone else's life, so that person will still remember you after many years, having been their student. And also I always looked up on my teachers while I was a student in school. For example, their motivation, how professional and committed they were towards engaging their students was something that resonate in my life a lot. And well, that combination of being surrounded in a teacher's family and that good example from my high school years made me take the decision to join a bachelor's in education and English language.
Fantastic. Wonderful. And then how about research? When did research become important to both of you?
Well, initially, I have to mention that when I entered this bachelor in education and English language, my motivation was to help students develop language skills at first. But as I gained more experience teaching, I realized that education is a field that is constantly evolving, and it's far more complex than I thought it was. So that's when I saw the importance of research. It became clear to me that the effective teaching relies on understanding the underlying mechanisms of learning. So I entered a master's degree in cognitive neuroscience applied to education. And somehow this program opened my eyes to some processes, to language acquisition, for instance, and how research could transform teaching by providing evidence-based practices.
Thank you. How about you, Priscilla?
Well, I think that Neil's answer resonates with me as well. I think that at the beginning, I was more focused when I began teaching, I was more focused on teaching the language to students. But after some years teaching in secondary education, I really felt this need to learn more about theory, to know more about methodologies. And then I did a master's in ELT and applied linguistics. And I think that the fact that we could actually have really rich discussions on the latest trends in ELT, but also challenge theories was something that enriched my experience. And then when I went back to school, after finishing my master's. I felt very critical of the things that were happening at school. I questioned a lot of things, and that I think that was the seed that was planted for me to pursue a PhD later.
Wonderful. And what about the role that research plays in the teaching and learning of English at the moment or in general? How do you both feel about that? Why is it important for research to continue, or why is it important for research to be carried out? And how does it connect to the actual teaching and learning of the language?
Well, I think that research certainly informs practice. I think that personally, and I was talking about this with my previous meeting with my other colleagues, that I believe that we are living theory. We do the things we do are informed by practice. Every day we do things that there is some research there. Like even if it is not in the literature, it's empirical. You don't touch the kettle when it's boiling because you know you're gonna get burned. So there is something there that you know based on experience. So I think that research definitely should inform practice, and I think that is really important in teaching. An issue that I can see when I worked as a teacher and when I researched and then when I collected my data is that sometimes teachers feel very distant from the theory, and they feel that it's not important for teaching, although they are applying theories, but they feel this division between theory and practice.
Yes, I totally adhere to what Priscilla says. Certainly, research has become vital for teachers, aiming to make informed decisions. That is absolutely true. Yet we know that the traditional avenues for accessing this research, such as, you can name it, conferences, papers, articles, tend to fall short in delivering content that is situated or relevant, as well as decentralized for teachers' contexts. So we know research can help us address educational challenges that we face, but now how do we ensure that those methods are culturally relevant and effective for teachers? So on the one hand, it plays a crucial role for teachers to make informed decisions. It would be important to take into consideration, though, the teachers' voices, connecting to what Priscilla is mentioning.
Yes, and I suppose the main way, or the traditional way that research actually ends up being implemented in the classroom is via policy changes to curriculum and syllabus, and also through the books that the teachers use that are informed by research and end up being implemented in the classroom. So those are the kind of two, I suppose, traditional ways, unless I'm missing out on something. But do you think it's also important, or would be a great idea for teachers to actually have a lot more connection to the latest research through conferences, through papers, etc.? Although, as you both said, it's difficult for teachers to find time to actually, one is the time to find, to actually read about this or to attend conferences. The conferences perhaps is an easier route, but also access is also problematic, isn't it? Because often the only people who have access to kind of a lot of research is, if you work for a university, you have access to the paid journals, etc. What about those areas? How do you think teachers can become more connected to the research that is going on?
Well, actually, it's part of the work we do with RISEL, with this research network in ELT in Chile, where we invite teachers to participate, but also we encourage them to do teacher research. And I think that having networks like these can help systematize local research that's being done that can respond to contextual issues that ELT teachers are experiencing. But usually people will find these paywalls. Not everyone has access to research. Neil and I were talking about this the other day. We were like saying, teachers don't reach a Saturday and say, okay, what are the latest trends in ELT? I'm going to find research about it. Because we know that the teaching practice is really, it takes a burden. It's really tiring. And sometimes they don't have the time. So I think that part of the work we do in RISEL is try to systematize this research and deliver it in a way that is more accessible to teachers, such as the creation of infographic where actually teachers can access anytime, and it's in a language or is in a way that is the research is more systematized for them to read it and to engage with it.
Yes, and as well as that access, the network also counts on active participation for teachers. So in many of these projects that the network has led during this last few years, there has not only been academics as members of this process, but also school teachers. And of course, the need to support teacher research to get a better understanding of English language teaching and learning in Chile. That is the impetus of the network, to try to give an answer and diminish this lack of access, this little local research, and trying to find ways to give value to teachers' expertise. They have a say. They have some important views that we should, as researchers, take into consideration.
Yes, and this started in 2014, and it was created by 5 members. Now we are 10. It was created by 5 members who, at the moment, they were carrying out research. They were doing a PhD, and they realized that the research in Chile was difficult to find. So they thought about, why don't we do something to systematize this research that is really important, and we need it. We all needed to do our lead reviews. So let's create this network.
Wonderful. And you mentioned access. And one of the things I always find interesting is this idea of being able to provide access and the way that a lot of people doing research end up doing that. Because, of course, the difficulty is that anyone doing research at a university level needs to actually publish in recognized journals, etc., to be able to continue, it's part of their professional path. But also a lot of these recognized journals are behind paywalls, etc. So what I have noticed that there are things like open journals being published, but also a lot of researchers I find are sharing on other social networks, for example, drafts of the research that they're going to be publishing officially, which is a way of making it more accessible as well. Is that something you think we will see a lot more of? Is it something that you're involved in Chile as well?
Sorry, your question is if we would see more
do you think
easy free access research?
Yeah, access to research was becoming more open, more readily available. Research is becoming more readily available to, for example, teachers.
I think that yes and no. Probably, I think there are some initiatives. Research can be accessible for teachers, and that teachers also feel empowered to carry out research, and not only teachers, also student teachers. But we know that there are these paywalls that where research is difficult to access. I think that the initiatives we have, such as I said before, such as podcasts or infographics, can provide an overview of the research that's being done in ELT in a way that teachers don't have to actually pay for that. And I think that some teachers have actually felt supported by researchers, and they have done research maybe for the first time and published, maybe not in a high impact journal, but in a peer-reviewed journal where people can have access to. Yeah, at the network, we try to give importance and to address some of the issues as this identification and dissemination of local research in ELT. Although it might not be at high impact journals yet, some of it, still we consider that we should
try to find ways so as to foster local knowledge and give value to Chilean ELT expertise. And well, eventually to try to bridge this gap between theory and practice in order to develop classroom teaching practices informed by Chilean local and research. And why do I think this is important? Because, well, ELT practices in Chile have been largely influenced by methodologies and research from global north. Particularly the US, the UK, or Europe in general. And these practices have often been implemented without considering the unique social and cultural or linguistic context of Chilean learners. So as a result, there has been this disconnect or mismatch between both the realities of the Chilean classrooms, the materials, the approaches and expectations promoted by these external models. So that's why it is relevant and pertinent to find ways, give teachers a voice, involve them in the research process, and try to obtain this information from the grassroots to identify those pertinent, applicable outcomes to apply in local school contexts.
Yes, that element of local and cultural context is so important, isn't it? The idea of, in order to be able to become effective in the classroom or any other way that language learning takes place, it needs to really take into account the sociocultural context. And you've touched upon an important thing there. You know, certainly the tradition or a lot of methodology, etc., has come down from other areas in the world where perhaps they've been more predominant and imposed upon cultures that maybe have not been, in the case of Chile, as responsive because of the differences in culture and other contexts. So are you seeing a lot more, and I imagine the answer is yes, but I would love to hear it from the Chilean perspective, a lot more kind of focus upon what makes Chile, for example, more different and how things need to be done differently within the Chilean context? And perhaps you could explain a little bit about some of the things you've seen that make that an important thing to take into account.
Yes, I think that, as you said, the answer is yes. I think that there are some, we are realizing, I think that, well, this is like a global trend too, that voices of the global South are rising. It's not only in Chile, but I think that in ELT in general, this is something that's been happening for the past decades maybe. And I think that it's been really important to take into account because, as you mentioned, sociocultural issues in Western countries where foreign theories come from are not the same as the ones we have in contexts of the global South, or particularly in Chile. So I think some of the things that have been investigated in ELT are language teacher identity. And I think that's been really important because in one way, I think that the teaching programs in countries like Chile have a strong focus on linguistic features of English language, but they diminish the importance of pedagogical knowledge. And sometimes because of these ideas of native speakerism as well, some teachers don't believe the agency or how important their teaching practice is in contexts like the ones in Chile. Chile will have contexts which are very underprivileged, where caring is really important, for example, for teachers to engage their students with the content. So I think that language teacher identity believes too, because what I believe as a teacher, what I believe works or doesn't work, why am I teaching English? I think these are, and to whom I am teaching English. I think these are questions that have been put forward, and there is discussion about this. There's a lot more to do, but there is a discussion already about this.
Yeah. So I wouldn't say it's something nationwide, this perspective of incorporating teachers' voices. It's very particular to the network. I hope it's being done in other networks as well, or institutions, but yet it remains a challenge to challenge this dominance, these hegemonic views, by fostering homegrown research and promoting practices that better reflect the needs and realities of Chilean students and teachers. It could become a movement to aim to decenter ELT knowledge and bring in more voices from the global south, and to ensure that the strategies used are more culturally and contextually appropriate for our learners. Also, to add to that idea, this emphasis on authorship. When you give a voice to teachers, Priscilla, I think you mentioned it, you empower them to collaborate, to not only collaborate, but also to feel empowered that, well, they are teachers. They know they are in a school context where there are issues that need to have answers. So among the many projects that the network has led, I think we are challenging those views and perspectives, and to incorporate more ideas from a global South perspective, considering teacher voices.
Yes, that sounds wonderful, but also very challenging.
This show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Don't miss out. Level up your professional development today and visit johncattbookshop.com to explore the full range of titles. Use the code JCTTR2425 for 20% off your order. Happy reading.
Are you a teacher who has concerns about your students' low reading levels? Are you also worried disadvantaged students won't be able to catch up? The online reading development program, Dreambox Reading Plus, adapts to a student's skill level, accelerates reading progress, and helps students acquire a wide vocabulary. The patented technology develops reading fluency and supports the transition to increased text complexity from Key Stage 2 to Key Stage 3 and 4, where language and vocabulary are more challenging. You can try the program with a free 4-week pilot today. Search Reading Solutions UK to find their website and request your free pilot.
How do we stop teachers marking books on their kitchen table on a Sunday night instead of wanting to spend time with their family? Is live marking truly cutting-edge practice? What if I told you that I could provide evidence of verbal feedback and its impact on student outcomes? Now, traditional marking, time and time again, is reported as the #1 reason why teachers leave the profession. It trumps behaviour issues and teacher salary. In Guide to Feedback, I share 9 case study skills that demonstrate 9 different ways to provide marking and feedback, all evidenced by student outcomes. Now, not every school will be ready for this, but hopefully you are ready to start your Feed Up and Feed Forward journey.
The Teacher Toolkit Guide to Feedback is out now, and you can get an exclusive 30% discount when you order Teacher Toolkit Guide to Feedback from Bloomsbury.com. Just use the code TTRGTF at the checkout. That's TTRGTF, and it expires 30th of November. Happy reading.
Do you ever wish you could sit down with other teachers and delve into the challenges and opportunities we face? Well, that's exactly what Table Talks at BetUK is all about. Join small roundtable discussions based on your selected topics to share insights, learn from peers, and tackle the big issues in education, all in a sponsor-free environment. This is your chance to connect and collaborate like never before. Be part of the conversation at Bet UK in January 2025. Visit uk.betshow.com to learn more.
There's a few things I'll just touch upon, I think, which I'd love to hear more about from both of you that were mentioned. One of them, this idea of decentering ELT, has become such a necessary thing. I think the idea of English as an international language, as a language for communication that is not owned by any country or anyone. There's no kind of central mandate from any one organization of what should be. There's no imposition of what English should be, at least that seems to be the trend at the moment. It's more of a language that is described rather than prescribed, which is probably helping in a way. But also this idea of moving away from the native speaker model, the idea of the only teacher model that should be promoted is a native speaker teacher, but also the idea of the goal for anyone learning the language should not be a native speaker. It should be something very different. And this is, I'm happy to say, in many, many places in the world changing. So there's a lot more value placed upon teachers who have learned the language, who are often, I think, much better in a much better position to teach it because they've learned the language, whereas a native speaker often has not. Well, a native speaker of English, for example, hasn't learned the language the way that someone whose language isn't English or whose native language isn't English has learned. It's a very different thing. But also, in many cases, certainly in the past, native speaker teachers would come in without actually even knowing the the language native to the country. I've rambled there quite a lot, but any reflections on to expand a little bit upon what I've said?
Yeah, I think that as you say, well, we know now that most of the people who speak English in the world are non-native. So why should non-native speakers attempt to sound like a native? It's also almost impossible. I think few people have that quality, and that doesn't make them good teachers either, which is something that we need to highlight. I think it's really important to mention this, and I think that in our context, it can be something that makes teachers feel less. Actually, I don't know English very well, even though the teacher can still know more English than the students, but they feel disempowered sometimes to teach, because as Neil was saying, and I also mentioned it, some teachers don't realize how good they are given their context. We have particular issues, and some teachers are very good at addressing those issues. It's obviously, if you are teaching the language, you should know it. I'm not saying that you just go there and teach whatever. Of course, you should know the language, but it's not the most important thing. And I think that's part of this center in ELT. It's good to know these things. Yes, it's good to know phonetics, phonemes, etc. But then how you would apply it in the classroom? What would you do in the classroom? You're not going to be teaching a student at a school, okay, we're going to learn the IPA. And no, I mean, you want your student to be able to communicate in different contexts, to be able to engage in conversations. And I remember when I did my master's in London 10 years ago, and then I went back to Chile. Some of my colleagues were like, yeah, but you didn't learn English because in London there aren't many native speakers. And I was like, okay, maybe you have a point there, but I can communicate in English with many people from many parts of the world because I learned the accents they have. I know what, I don't know, someone from India sounds like, someone from Uganda sounds like. And what is more valuable? Is it more valuable to speak like a recording you learned at school, or is it more valuable to actually be able to communicate with people from all over the world? For me, it's definitely the second one. And I think that most of the work we do with RISO too, now we have expanded thanks to Hornby Trust. We have got some funding from Hornby Trust, and we are actually doing research with Brazil and Argentina, and it is about this center in ELT practices. And our focus is to look for local research. Actually, Neil is leading Chile. I'm leading Argentina. Another colleague from RISO is leading Brazil. And what we are looking into is teacher research in ELT, designed, produced in the way of an infographic, so teachers can have access and can know what's being done in the local context.
Yeah, what's relevant about that project in particular that Priscilla was talking about is that it brings together academics, school teachers, and students, undergrads, who work in collaboration to decenter ELT knowledge. So these three members think of certain issues from school contexts situated in Chile, for example, as in the case of Chile, but the group of Argentina or Brazil will try to find issues in their local context as well. And those local issues will be given answer by means of evidence, but local evidence created or developed by local researchers, teachers, for example, by means of action research, exploratory research, but particularly developed by school teacher researchers. So it's a very interesting form for decentering ELT knowledge, and to highlight the relevance of this locally produced teacher research, and as well as providing this regional platform to disseminate the unknown and undervalued knowledge created by sometimes teacher researchers in the global south.
Yes, I think this movement to engage teachers in action research and exploratory research is wonderful. It is, as you say, it's a great way of empowering them, but also it's a great way of introducing them to the idea of evidence-based practice. The idea of, well, even, you can look at your own context, one class, and find out how you can measure what is happening there or reflect upon what's happening there and make a real difference to the way that you teach and the way that the students learn. I think it's a very empowering thing, and I'm all for it. Is it something that you see is growing in importance, and are there more teachers taking this up?
Yes. Making informed decisions is something that cannot be overstated, and little by little is being pushed by different networks. For example, we have the case of RISELT, but there are also other associations as well that are trying to push this element of evidence-based teaching practices to make informed decisions when teaching, when delivering a lesson, when assessing, when planning, when grading. There has to be a way that is informed by the evidence. But then again, I strongly, and I think that's the feeling from the network as well, that evidence has to be connected to local voices, has to be informed by local voices as well.
Yes, and I think we have contributed with RISE little by little because, for example, recently people from the Ministry of Education are attending our conferences and they want to partner up with us. And some colleagues are going to attend a meeting too that is LATAM related. So I think that starting to have an impact, as you said earlier, on policy. I'm not saying it's happening right now, but it could eventually happen. It's really, really important because while policy doesn't change and is just created by policy makers, these experts from other places, it's difficult for teachers to embrace, to enact these policies. So I think that little by little, there is a growing interest in doing this, but it's very slow.
Yes, I can imagine. It is very encouraging, though, to see the coming together of teachers with researchers, with policymakers, because after all, it's what each one of those elements, plus more school leaders and parents and the learners themselves, they all have an essential role to play when it comes to education. One of the things I think is is quite interesting. I might be wrong in my interpretation of this, but so I'd love to hear from what you think, is that in the area of language teaching, and in particular English language teaching, I think things are quite progressive in the way that that researchers are trying to engage with teachers and trying to ensure that teachers are doing their own research, and that research is being is getting to the teachers, is having an impact in the classroom, etc., and engaging with policymakers. Is that particular to English language teaching that you know about, or is it, is ELT kind of providing an interesting model that might be taken up by other subjects, or am I just sort of, is it my bias because I spend more time looking at ELT than any other aspect of education? That is why I think the way I think.
Well, personally, I think that English language teaching uses a lot of teacher research theories. It's nurtured by a lot of teacher research theories, but obviously the teaching of English is a very particular discipline, because it's not only a content. We teach the content through the content. So teachers need to develop a lot of metalinguistic skills. I think that, I think that in the field of English teaching, I think research is people are very interested in many things. I think that if you just look at, I don't know, LinkedIn or these platforms, you are going to find a lot of ELT work now related to AI, for example, which I think is fascinating and something we should all, read about, because I think is the future. I don't know what you think, Neil, but I don't know if ELT influences other areas of teaching.
Well, I would say that it's not exclusive to English language teaching. I would say that teachers of other fields, mathematics, Spanish, music, can be benefited from evidence-based practices. My personal view on that is that as the evidence, at least the latest trends, tend to be in English. We as English teachers tend to consume that type of evidence, which is in the target language, opposed to, for instance, a teacher of mathematics or a music teacher who, for example, in our Chilean context, it may be very unlikely that they know English. They could, but the percentage of English speakers in Chile is very, very low. I would say there's a 2% of Chileans who speak English recently. It is not exclusive, but I would say that this knowing the language helps us to have somehow access to this latest evidence.
Thank you. And you mentioned that the amount of people who know or have a working knowledge of English in Chile is quite low. I think this is something we see all over the region, all over the world. There is also kind of a lot of confusion about how to measure this, which I won't go into, because a lot of the information that is published as being fact is very unreliable, I think, at the moment, which is a shame. But it keeps being reported in the newspapers. And I think, is it something that you see changing or improving over time, or do you think it's a constant? This idea of the amount of people who are able to speak English within Chile, for example, your context, is something that it's always going to be challenging to have improvements.
Go ahead, Priscilla.
Sorry. Yeah, so I think that that's a really, really good point you make. I think that the last results we had show that the knowledge of English language in context of the global South in Chile, it's a class thing. So people who come from wealthy contexts, who go to private schools, they get the best results in English knowledge, whereas people from underprivileged contexts get very poor results under the band that they should be. And there are various reasons for that. I don't strongly, I would say it's not the teachers. Obviously, it's not the teachers. But there are many things that intersect that. And again, it is a class thing. Some research in Chile has shown that unfortunately, there is this beliefs from teachers that students from underprivileged contexts won't learn English. So their efforts are not there. They don't go to the classroom thinking my students will learn. They have decided the future of their students, which is really sad. And I think this is something, again, that the Center in ELT can support because curiously, most of the teachers, most people who are in the teaching profession in Chile, well, Neil comes from a family of teachers. In my case, I am the first professional in my family. Most people who are teachers in Chile are also the first professional in their family. They come from underprivileged contexts. They attend these schools, and then something happens when they go to university that they forget where they came from. And then when they go back to school to teach, they think, oh, these students won't learn. But actually, we were one of those students. So it's really strange what happens. I think it's purely, well, I finished collecting my data in 2019 with pre-service teachers, and my observations were that it is purely, it has a lot to do with the policy, with how the program is constructed. It's constructed showing examples of Western contexts, 10 students who speak English. We're going to teach 10 students who speak English. How are we going to motivate these students who are already motivated? When then pre-service teachers go to a school with 45 students and they are not interested in learning English. They are meant to have a certain knowledge, a certain foundation of the language that they don't have. So you already start with a start line that is quite far behind the beginning of the start line. So I think that this can change. I think that research about the center and ELT can help making things change. But I think there will have to be some work on teachers in understanding the complexities of the ELT classroom and how they can actually address these issues. Sometimes pre-service teachers always said, yeah, my students couldn't learn English, but in an ideal context. This is not the ideal context, and there is no ideal context. The classroom is never an ideal context. There will always be things going on. So how we address this as a teacher, I think the center in ELT is something that can help into building tools and qualities for teachers to actually do this.
Yeah, challenging those hegemonic views of towards English language teaching, particularly coming from Western center approaches, could be somehow what's triggering sometimes this disattachment towards English language, and this could be or could have an impact on students' attitudes towards the language. So yes, I strongly agree with Priscilla in that decentering ELT could be the way to make these informed decisions and challenge these global north approaches to promote more local research and answer these local issues.
And how do we move forward with decentering ELT? Is it a case of the main focus needs to be on the teacher, on pre-service and in-service teacher development to kind of focus upon their understanding and have them affect what happens in the classroom through that way, or is it in other areas of the educational system? Is it through the policymakers? Is it through changing textbooks? Is it through the school leadership, or is it a bit of everything?
Well, teacher development, you mentioned something key there, is very important. Teachers are the facilitators of learning. So when teachers grow, when they adapt, when they improve their practices, that would eventually have an impact on students' outcomes. So taking that into consideration, I think is key. And that could be connected to decentering ELT, for instance. So a way for, and this is something that RISEL has considered as professional development, for instance, to connect school teachers to work in collaboration with academics and undergrads, because teachers' development is not only sending teachers to conferences to just receive information, but rather make them active participants of the research process, to make them help and transfer their views, their voice, and have an impact to the creation of new evidence that responds to school local issues. So PD is relevant, but now how are we going to direct professional development? Just as receptive elements of this professional development, or as active? And a way for making teachers to be active is to invite them to participate, give them the tools, and learn in co-work collaborative projects.
Yes, I agree with Neil. I think that part of the work that RISEL does too is to connect these researchers, teachers, and student teachers, because the center in ELT is carrying out contextual research, but also having the points of view of people who are becoming teachers, because they have their own issues becoming teachers, and then teachers who are working in the school system, and then researchers. I think that is a very good way. And actually, professional development, as Neil said, we are, at the moment, some of us are carrying out some collaborative research with other colleagues from RISEL on some of the podcasts, how the podcasts promoted professional development on teachers. And some teachers reported that actually being part of these podcasts helped them reflect on their practice or learn from other colleagues and implement some things in the classroom. So building these communities of learning, I think, are really important to the Center ELT.
This show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Don't miss out. Level up your professional development today and visit johncattbookshop.com to explore the full range of titles. Use the code JCTTR2425 for 20% off your order. Happy reading.
Are you a teacher who has concerns about your students' low reading levels? Are you also worried disadvantaged students won't be able to catch up? The online reading development program, Dreambox Reading Plus, adapts to a student's skill level, accelerates reading progress, and helps students acquire a wide vocabulary. The patented technology develops reading fluency and supports the transition to increased text complexity from Key Stage 2 to Key Stage 3 and 4, where language and vocabulary are more challenging. You can try the program with a free 4-week pilot today. Search Reading Solutions UK to find their website and request your free pilot.
How do we stop teachers marking books on their kitchen table on a Sunday night instead of wanting to spend time with their family? Is live marking truly cutting-edge practice? What if I told you that I could provide evidence of verbal feedback and its impact on student outcomes? Now, traditional marking time and time again is reported as the number one reason why teachers leave the profession. It trumps behaviour issues and teacher salary. In Guide to Feedback, I share 9 case study skills that demonstrate 9 different ways to provide marking and feedback, all evidenced by student outcomes. Now, not every school will be ready for this, but hopefully you are ready to start your Feed Up and Feed Forward journey.
The Teacher Toolkit Guide to Feedback is out now, and you can get an exclusive 30% discount when you order Teacher Toolkit Guide to Feedback from Bloomsbury.com. Just use the code TTRGTF at the checkout. That's TTRGTF, and it expires 30th of November. Happy reading.
Do you ever wish you could sit down with other teachers and delve into the challenges and opportunities we face? Well, that's exactly what Table Talks at Bet UK is all about. Join small roundtable discussions based on your selected topics to share insights, learn from peers, and tackle the big issues in education, all in a sponsor-free environment. This is your chance to connect and collaborate like never before. Be part of the conversation at Bet UK in January 2025. Visit uk.betshow.com to learn more.
I think in decentering ELT can be about changing the attitude that the only professional development is top down through someone doing a training session or a teacher being on a course. There are all sorts of things, as you said, involved in their own CPD through action research, through communities of practice, through being able to reflect upon what they're doing with other teachers that they're working side by side with. There's peer observation. There's all sorts of really important initiatives that can be part of teacher development, isn't there? That it's not the usual kind of just the training course, webinar, expert telling the teacher what they need to know kind of development, which has become, which is the traditional route. But there's so much more to that, isn't there?
Definitely. Yeah.
Yes.
So I'd like to pick up this. There's a couple of things I've got in the back of my mind that have been mentioned that I'd like to pick up on and ask you a bit more about if you'd like to speak about them. One of them is this idea of teacher identity, which I think we've touched upon. The idea of there's a lot of aspects of that you've already mentioned. This idea of the teacher starting to change their mindset and move away from being able to thinking that my English isn't so good, or whatever it is that is perhaps holding the teacher back. But what for you, the area of teacher identity, what are the important aspects of that you think that you could tell me from a research point of view? What kind of research is happening at the moment in teacher identity, and how is that affecting or changing the way perhaps teachers feel about who they are and what they're doing in the classroom? If that's not too difficult a question, I don't know.
No, definitely. Well, actually, my research thesis was about the good language teacher. So what they thought,
wonderful.
what pre-service teachers thought it was a good language teacher, and how they put it in practice in the classroom. And then what was the final outcome after they implemented these ideas. And yes, at the beginning, most of them were like, to be a good language teacher, you need to speak the language perfectly. That was like something really, really important. And then through the practice, they realized that, yeah, it was important, but there were other things that were important too. So I think that over the time I collected data, I think that to me, a good language teacher would be an inclusive language teacher. We're talking a lot about inclusion these days, and not only in the terms of disabilities, but more broadly in terms of how we include, refugee students who go to a country where they don't speak the first language even. Or, for example, in Chile, we had a strong migration of people from Haiti. At some point, they speak Creole. How we include those students, or even students who speak the same first language, they have different cultural differences. So how do we include these students? And also including students who are underprivileged. How do we make them feel included in the classroom? So I think for me, this is something that needs to be more researched. It's a path, but this opens arenas to, for example, explore translanguaging, I think that a language teacher identity that is from the global south can develop translanguaging, and we know that Constant Leung has done amazing work. Malva Barahona has also talked about this, and she's from Chile, and they have talked about the potential of translanguaging. Now we need to see how we implement it in the classroom. That's the other part. And about identity particularly, I really like Norton because it's more, I would say, critical about what identity is and how this affects the experiences of teachers. But also, I like David Block, who talks about language teacher identities or language identities. And with Morton, I think, he did some work where they found out that, for example, in our context, having a political identity, it's also important. In 2019, we had a social uprising. So all these issues were really important. And education was something that was very, very important. It was discussed among everyone. And I think that in contexts like the Global South, some teachers cannot afford a political identity. Karen Johnson also says that you have to be political, but how can you be political when you have a precarized job and you are a breadwinner and you don't want to lose your job because you don't want to be involved in those things? So I think that, again, foreign theorists can have these amazing ideas of what identity is, but then we need to adjust them to our context and see what realistically can be done.
Yes, I think, many ELT teachers face pressures related to, standardized testing curriculum requirements by the public policies that comes from the Ministry of Education. And those, in a way, may have an impact on their identity, taking them to consider that they should be seen as rather agents of change more than mere mediums or pathways to transfer information. An ELT professional is an agent of social change, as I think Priscilla was mentioning, promoting not just language acquisition or learning, but also critical thinking, global awareness, because, language, as we talked previously, English language does not belong to a specific country. English is to be known as a lingua franca that could help us feel more responsible for preparing, for example, in this case, English as a tool for preparing students to engage with the global world. So, as well as, and that takes us from the local experiences to now also through English try to respond to global challenges that go beyond Chile. Particularly, we live in a globalized economy where English, we know, plays a crucial role.
Yes, really, really interesting. Thank you for your thoughts on all of that. The other thing I'd like to pick up on is that you mentioned, Priscilla, I think, was this emergence of AI, artificial intelligence, and how that is starting to have an impact upon what you do, what everyone does in education. And we're all trying to get to grips with this, which is particularly difficult because it keeps changing on a weekly basis, what we need to get to grips with. I'd like to just mention an article, actually, I saw the other day that was particularly worrying for me, that has a relevance to the university context, which is an article in edsurge.com about a situation. I'm just trying to see, I think it's in Lithuania, where two university teachers, Hall and Goda, have started to use an AI assistant with their students, a chatbot. And the thing that caught my attention that started ringing the alarm bells was that basically it seemed that these university lecturers had created this AI twins of themselves so that they don't have to talk to students and can continue to concentrate on research. And there was a quote there.
Wow.
So from a faculty perspective, especially someone who is overwhelmed with teaching and needs a teaching assistant, that's very attractive to them, that they can focus on research and not focus on teaching. So it seemed to be that these lecturers basically feel that the teaching part of their job, the actual isn't important, and it's the research only that is important. So if they can offload the teaching or the students to an AI assistant, that would make their lives better. I imagine that's a very provocative point of view.
Yeah.
And I'd love to get your reaction to that before we move into talking about how AI is actually starting to affect your own lives.
I think that only reflects the value that universities place on research. I think that as much as most people now who are in academia, people in TESOL who are in academia teach, there is a component of research. And even though you can be well evaluated by your students and you really enjoy the teaching activity, some universities will place more interest in your outputs, which are measured in publications. Sometimes they are not measured in other ways, such as conference presentations or, podcasts or infographics. They would focus on your research output. So I wouldn't blame those teachers. I find that, wow, like it's shocking, right? Because then you have a student talking to a machine. But again, I think that just only reflects the issues that universities have. How much emphasis are we placing on the teaching practice? I actually adding to that. I see it now. Adding to that, I read an article the other day where I think there is an AI thing doing support with GCSE students at a school in London. So they don't have a teacher either. It's only AI.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of, as you say, I think partly the problem is the pressure, perhaps, that these university lecturers are under to do so much, to juggle. They have a demand from the university to do this research and to publish, but they also have to teach, etc. But maybe it's the university doesn't think the teaching is the most important part of their job, that the research is what is going to actually help them in further their career, or that they give importance to it. And as you say, it's also, as if teachers are so busy, then the temptation to actually try to, or anyone, reduce workload through using AI is going to be there, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
So how about you both? How has this emergence of AI affected your professional lives?
I think that I'm working in the UK at the moment. I work at the University of Leeds, and I think that all universities here have the problem that students are assessed through essays. Therefore, how can we, is there a way to control this? You can tell your students this is academic integrity. The idea is that you can think critically. I don't think personally, because I've marked enough essays to realize when one comes from it's AI prefabricated or not. And I think that AI is not at the moment today, is not thinking critically. It's not enough to get like a distinction mark, but can definitely give you a pass mark, I would say. So I think that this is it's a moment where we need to rethink assessment, definitely. I think one thing about where I work, the TESOL program, we always try to incorporate the students' experiences. So we ask them how this theory resonates with your practice. How can you implement it in your practice? But there is more to do, probably. Yes.
I can also see, sorry, Neil, I can also see how the temptation for anyone who has to mark, a teacher who has to mark essays, actually asking ChatGPT to mark the essays. And so that there's a bizarre situation that I've mentioned before, where you get a teacher using, for example, ChatGPT to plan their lesson, to come up with a rubric for an assessment, for a writing, for example, or for an essay. The students taking that and getting ChatGPT to write the essay, and then the teacher using ChatGPT to mark the essay. So you get a situation where you have a whole assessment cycle where no human has been involved at any point, which is very scary.
Exactly. And the temptation is big, because when you see that this is an essay written with AI, it's like, why bother? Like, I'm going to start assessing someone that doesn't exist. But actually, I think 3 weeks ago, we attended a workshop that was about using Copilot. So at the moment, the university they have a traffic light system for assessment. So you have a red light for it's a no-no, amber, you can discuss things, but you cannot falsify information. Basically, you cannot ask it to produce an essay for you. And then you have green light. But we have also talked about this as educators. We think like, okay, we understand why students are so enthusiastic about this. When you tell, can you write a letter about this? And then it's done within seconds, like it saves so much time. But then we also think, okay, again, we need to rethink assessment. We will have to eventually incorporate AI, because the person who was running the workshop said, sometimes your students will get a job and they will have to know how to use AI. It's going to be part of their skills. And they cannot say, oh, no, I cannot use it because I wasn't allowed to use it at university. So we kind of had to prepare for the future context, and we need to learn about this. But yeah, it's so, everything is happening so fast, but I think we'll have to rethink a lot of things. Yes.
Definitely. What do you think, Neil?
Well, yes, at the university where I work, it has been promoted quite a lot. Actually, we have been asked to participate in several workshops on how to incorporate the use of AI in our classes. Particularly in my case, I teach English for specific purposes to different programs, and it has been beneficial because, well, in my case, I don't have to make students write long essays, and if I make them write something, I just do it the old-fashioned way, pen and paper. So that's not much of a problem for me. But it's been beneficial in a way that it helps me adapt content to their students' professions, since it's a specific purposes program. So it's been okay, although I'm still skeptical because it portrays lots of biases in terms of the type of language that students are given, and not this overview and well, differences in English that we can find in terms of accent, in terms of dialect. I've noticed that it's very, very specific to certain areas in particular. And that's why I'm still skeptic with regard to AI being incorporated to English, since it still portrays a Western-centric view of English language teaching. I'm worried about it.
No, I think you're right to worry about it. I think it's something that has been highlighted all the time. The bias is particularly worrying, I think. as well as this idea of it exacerbating the digital divide as well. You know, if AI is becoming important, and as you said, Priscilla, in a lot of situations at work, people are expected now to start to use it. I know of particular cases where people, companies, organizations have incorporated the use of ChatGPT and are encouraging it with employees to save time, but they need to have a really critical usage policy when it comes to using it, I think. But this idea of bias is particularly worrying.
Yeah, definitely. And actually, that's a very good point, Neil, because it's not only about the English language. I think it's also about, for example, authors. I listened to a podcast more than a year ago, so maybe this changed already. But I heard that, yes, some of the issues was that if you ask for, I don't know, authors, philosophy authors, it would give you only Western philosophy authors and men. And then if you ask, okay, why are you only giving me names of people from here and only men? Oh, okay, I will give you another list, still men. So then the last option, and when you ask a lot, it would be women, for example. So I think that's also something that we need to pay attention to. Yes, definitely.
Not only that, but there's the hallucination. So it's not really designed to provide, or at least originally ChatGPT has not been designed to provide information really, or fact. It's designed to provide language. So it's trying to give you what it thinks you want.
Yeah.
And so if you ask for research on a particular subject, it can invent authors of papers and papers that were never written, or be full of errors about the titles or the dates or what is said in those papers, quotations, etc. So I imagine from a research point of view, it's something that is very worrying.
A very scary scenario.
Yes.
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 Yeah.
That just gets worse with time, because if these documents are published, then they potentially could become used as sources and cited by researchers. So you have a kind of false bank of research that was never carried out, for example, or things that were never written.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Anyway, we have to be critical about that. Listen, we're coming to the end of our time. I would just love to thank you both for joining me. I've been really interested in hearing your ideas about research and the situation in Chile.
Thank you very much.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Neil and Priscilla.
Thank you.
You've been listening to Teachers Talk Radio. Tune in live and listen back at ttradio.org. We look forward to hearing from you next time on Teachers Talk Radio.